noted a variety of factors, including the trade dispute with China, rising interest rates, and Wall Street's massive sell-off in December. Looking ahead to 2020, more than half of the economists surveyed expect a significant downturn in the presidential election year. Tom Roberts, NBC News Radio.
Fiat Chrysler is still denying its cars were programmed to cheat on emissions tests, even though it's agreed to a massive settlement. The car maker has to pay about $800 million for using defeat devices to cheat air pollution tests. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Why are you listening to this radio station? Why? When you can host your own radio show. You're listening and you think you can do better? You have a message or a product you want everyone to know about. Host your own radio show. Team up with the area's best radio professionals and let them make you sound like you should be on NBC. KCAA NBC Radio, that is. KCAA produces more than 50 local programs each week on subjects ranging from business and sports to political talk, vegan diets, or even marijuana-related issues. We don't just broadcast on the radio, we broadcast to the world. Online, on TV, on social media, on Facebook. You'll be all over. Imagine what your friends will say. And KCAA reaches over 5 million people on 3 radio stations. Join the staff on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. NBC Radio. Jump on the KCAA Express. Call 909-793-1065. That's 909-793-1065. And get ready to transmit.
KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow this show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John, and kids, we are on Instagram. So be sure to follow us on that social media platform. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John and click for following. We'd love to see you there. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I am on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And tonight, this portion of the show is brought to you in part by Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, the name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you're looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332 or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell them Father John sent you. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, an equal housing lender. And do tell Ernie that you heard it here. He's been a great sponsor of this show, and I know some of you have been going to him for loans, and that's wonderful. A few things going on in the area that's kind of sad. We're one more day of government shutdown, and really it's a battle of ego. Every scientific study and governmental study that has been out says we don't need the wall. But on a crazy thing, of course we weren't supposed to pay for it in the first place. Mexico is going to pay for it. And being that we're not collecting pesos, I guess we're being stuck with that bill or not. But the fact is, look, if you know some of these federal workers that are not able to meet their bills, this isn't their fault. So if you can do an act of charity, please do. I know in California that our new governor has made it so that they can apply for unemployment, but that's only one state, and there's a lot of people who are hurting, who are serving this country. You know, that's the Coast Guard, and my uncle was in the Coast Guard, and so they have a special place in my heart. So if you can do some good for them, I sure would appreciate it. You know, charity begins at home, so let's bring home some charity to these folks. I have some great guests this evening. We have Anna R. and Lori, who are members of Addictive Eaters Anonymous. You may not have heard of that program. And a lot of people don't know that food addiction is a serious problem. And it's one that doesn't get the attention it deserves. Many people suffer silently with something that's out of their control or that they don't know that they can have help with. And instead of getting help, many times they get shamed. And that's not the way to deal with it. People aren't doing eating addiction because they want to. They're not doing it because it tastes good. They're doing it because they cannot not do that. And as someone who's done a lot of counseling work and worked with people with different kinds of ailments, I think this is one of the most misunderstood diseases out there. And so I hope you'll find tonight's program informative. And if you or someone you know has an eating disorder that can use some help, this is one place to check out. Now, this isn't diagnosing all eating disorders. I'm not saying that this is for anorexia or bulimia. While it may be something to aid with that, I do want to strongly suggest that you do talk therapy and psychiatry. They work hand in hand. They're two dance partners that belong together, not separate. So we're going to learn a little bit about this, and I want to thank both of you ladies for being here tonight. And if you'd like to say hi to our audience this evening.
Hi, how are you? Great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm glad to be here as well. Thank you for having us.
Well, I'm glad you're both here, and thank you for being here. What brought you to the point where you knew you needed help? Want to start, Lori?
Okay. It took me a long time before I decided or felt that I needed help, and then it took me a while to ask for help.
Yes.
So it took me about 15 years in the addiction of addictive eating before I knew somewhere deep inside that I was completely powerless over this, and there was nothing more I could do for myself. And I became so desperate that I finally just became very fearful and frightened and just knew there was no way out for me, and it just brought me to my knees.
Sure.
And at that point, I just thought, if there's anything at all, God, please help me. And from there, I took some action.
Outstanding. And for those of you watching on YouTube or Ustream, if you're wondering why you're not seeing these ladies on the camera, it's out of respect for the traditions of their program, which has to do with their anonymity, so they can give their name and last initial. But in the media, we've been asked to not show their faces or give their last names, and we're grateful for them being here. So we're honoring that request and honoring their tradition. Anna, you want to share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was, I didn't so much know that I had a problem. I was just so tired that food was the center of my world. And, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I would be so obsessed about it that I would go, and I say this jokingly, but it is true. I can tell you every party I went to what was served at the buffet, but I don't remember why I went to the party. I don't know what the event was, but I can tell you what the food was. And or before I would go, I would even ask, what are they going to serve? And that's for me how it was. Just my life was just revolved around food, and then I never felt full. I couldn't stop eating. There was no switch for me that says enough is enough. And and so then just the yo-yo diets started, and I'd lose weight, and it was really easy to lose weight, so it wasn't a big deal. I'd gain and lose and gain and lose, but it just gets to a point that I was just so exhausted. There's got to be a better way. And, and I was really lucky that I was able to find a 12-step program. I didn't even know they existed.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no idea 12-step of any kind of program existed. And I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I think Google was fairly new, and I Googled it, and this chat room came up, and people were talking about my disease, and for the first time, I felt like somebody can understand me. It was just incredible.
Yeah, and I think one of the really cruel things that people say out of the fact they just don't understand. They say, well, just don't eat.
Yeah, just don't eat.
That's not really an option because you have to eat to live. But if you're living to eat, that's a different thing. And one of the things that's not helpful with some of the food that's out there today with the genetically altered food is the corn syrup turns off the part of your brain that says, I'm full.
Yes.
And a lot of our children today are suffering with obesity, not because of the fact that they've developed that yet, which they may, but because so much of the food, particularly, and I'll probably get a letter from Mickey D's and Carl's and all those people, but the truth is the truth. The corn syrup that they use turns off that part of the brain. And so even though your stomach is full, the brain doesn't know that. So it says keep eating, and they don't know why they feel so sick afterwards. Well, that's one of the reasons. And I can cite all kinds of scientific data proving that. And so when you're already dealing with this as an addiction, that doesn't help matters at all. So I would imagine that part of your program is you really have to watch ingredients. Would I be correct in that?
Not exactly.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's why we're here to educate people.
Part of the program is what we call we need to get off the food.
Okay.
It's like an alcoholic would have to put the plug in the jug.
Right.
So we have sponsors who are in recovery or recovered, however you want to look at it, and they suggest a food plan that we follow, and it takes, using self-discipline and guidance, we follow that food plan, and we don't take one bite less or one bite more like an alcoholic won't take one drink.
Right. One's too many, 1,000's not enough. Right.
Exactly. So that is a very small part of the program, but that's the first, one of the first things that we do is have to put down that food. So,
well, that's good to know because, again, I hadn't even heard of this program, and I'm pretty versed in a lot of 12-step recovery programs, which there's I think they say over 120 now, different 12-step recovery programs, all that began with Alcoholics Anonymous. And OA is different from this. I mean, I knew about Overeaters Anonymous, had a lot of friends in Overeaters Anonymous, and their program, just what you said there, is different than what my friends there from OA have share with me. So that's very interesting information for me to have. Can you describe what this program is? Because there's a lot of people, I'm sure, haven't heard about Addictive Eaters Anonymous. So,
well, we believe with Addictive Eaters Anonymous that one addiction can swap from the other. And so we believe that not only do you have to get off the food, but you have to get off of all mind-altering substances.
Good idea.
Yeah, and because and to give you an example, when I first came into the program, there wasn't a lot of meetings, and so I was told to go to AA meetings. I'd find AA meetings, there'd be recovery there. And that's when I really learned that, wow, this addiction does swap. It's the same addiction. And it's the same symptoms. And so, as Lori said, we have to learn, and just like you said, we put down the food, and how do you do that? You still have to eat.
Right.
And so we're given a food plan, but you're right in the sense that the corn syrup adds to it for a lot of people. But our food is very clean, and we write down our food and we stick to that. And so for me, I don't get to alter that food plan. And when I do, that's like picking up the first drink. And so I have to be very clean and very clear on what I'm able to eat and not eat. I've had, I went to a meeting one time in a different program, and the guy ate a whole bag of chips, and he said, but it wasn't his abstinent food. And I thought, there's no way I could do that. Like, I couldn't stop. If I opened up a package, I'd eat the whole thing. If I opened up a cookie, there's no just take two for me. I'd eat the whole thing. So it is a serious disease in that sense, but but we have to work with a sponsor. We have to go to meetings, and we have to talk to people who understand this, because it's not easy to understand.
Absolutely. And tonight I'll be asking you a lot of different questions. Part of them is for the benefit of the listeners. Part of it is for my benefit. Because, again, this is an area that, anyone who thinks they know everything about everything is a fool. And so I'd never claim to know everything about everything. So I try to learn tonight as well. And speaking of learning, I've just learned it's time for us to go to our first commercial break. So you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. My guests tonight are Lori and Anna with Addictive Eaters Anonymous, and we'll be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Hey guys, this is Andrew Caravella. Just wanted to let you know that KCAA has a new listener line for all of you that have a phone. Now you can listen to KCAA in the grocery store, in the doctor's office, or when you want to pretend you're on the phone with someone just so that creeper will leave you alone. Call 720-835-3099 today and listen to your favorite KCAA radio shows. That number again, 720-835-3099. KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no caller or listener behind.
If you're looking for a full or part-time sales position and you have radio, TV, or print media experience, KCAA has a great opportunity waiting for you that pays the highest commissions in the market. KCAA is the only station in the IE that broadcasts on 3 frequencies, so advertisers receive 3 ads for 1 low rate. This makes KCAA a must-buy for every local business. If you're interested in a sales position with us, email ceo@kcaaradio.com.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And again, this is a program on talking about eating disorders. But before we get back into that, I want to remind you this is a listener-supported program in addition to our sponsors. And so if you would go to www.viewpointwithfatherjohn.com and click the support button, your donations help to keep us on the air. And so I'm very grateful for those of you who've been contributing. Also, as some of you know, we have these great mugs that you can buy, and we have a t-shirt and polo shirt. And if you really want to empty your wallet out a little bit, we even have a polo or a pullover sweatshirt that has the logo and my name on there, and so everyone will think you're me, and you can run up bills, and I'll probably get stuck with them. But anyhow, this portion of the program is brought to you in part by Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, a name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you are looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332, or online at mortgageswithernie.com. Tell them that Father John sent you. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, an equal housing lender. And I just got a text from the Holy One, Gabby. Those of you know Gabby, my wife. She couldn't be here tonight. She was working overtime in L.A., and so she texted me, let me know she's home, and that even though Nick and I are without adult supervision this evening, she's going to make a list of all the things we'll need to talk about when I get there. So, honey, I'm glad you're home. I love you, and I'm doing the best I can to be good, but I didn't take my Ritalin, so we don't know what's going to happen. Uh-oh. So, having said all that, back to the show. Again, we're talking about Addictive Eaters Anonymous, and I'm very grateful to have Lori and Anna here. And what I'm going to ask them to do is to talk a little bit about what their definition of sobriety is and to help us understand a little bit of this program. Ladies?
Yeah. Okay. So as Anna mentioned earlier in the program, sobriety for us is freedom from addictive eating and all mind-altering substances. And that may be a little surprising to newcomers who think food is their only problem, but we've realized that it's a symptom of a bigger problem, which we call the disease of addiction. Yeah.
Very good.
So we have to address all areas of addiction. And we find that we can have freedom from food addiction if we address all areas of addiction. And fortunately, people who have had, anorexia or bulimia or any other forms of addictive eating have found freedom and recovery through, as we define sobriety. So it entails, besides just being off all mind-altering substance, it entails working and living a spiritual life through the 12 steps.
Sure.
That we adapt from Alcoholics Anonymous.
Well, I know in many 12-step programs, they recommend that in addition to doing the 12 steps, that you're also open to outside help, psychiatry, psychology, spiritual help. Does your program also encourage that in addition to 12 steps, that they also look into outside counseling as well?
We don't address those things because we don't feel like we're experts in that at all. So our primary and sole purpose is to share our experience through the program, excuse me, and how we have achieved sobriety in terms of working the 12 steps and finding a higher power and things like that. So anything else it's purely, in our program, sobriety is a personal choice.
Sure.
It's not a program of promotion and subtraction, and it really is an individual choice, and all those other areas are not up to us to decide.
Well, I wasn't saying deciding, but I've seen people on both sides that say, well, all you need is 12 steps and you don't need anything else in life. And then most 12-step programs in their literature say, look, this is a good place to start, and it's important you work the steps, but be open to other things too. You're not sending them there, but to be open that you may have some things that the steps aren't covering. And so, but you guys are against outside help?
It's not against, no, we're not against. We have no problem. We're not against or for anything in terms of outside help at all. That's an individual choice.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Anna, what do you want to share with us?
Also, I just want to make it clear, too, that a lot of times when people hear Addictive Eaters Anonymous, they just think it's overweight. And it's not just about being overweight. It's about being underweight. It's about maybe obsession with exercise, as Lori said, bulimia, anorexia. So it's any form of anything that would bring an obsessive mind towards, am I too thin? Am I too overweight? Where you're obsessing about your looks, not just about the weight, and it really is more than that, and it is more than the food.
Sure.
So I did, because I think a lot of people feel like, oh, it's just another diet program. or it's
Right.
and it's not. We're not about diets at all. And it really is. It's the freedom from the obsession is what I want to talk about, and make clear that that's what this program is about. And it is, because when I came to the program, I thought it was about the food. I thought, well, if I could just learn to eat, like a lady, and I don't obsess over it. But then I come to the program and find out that the food is just a solution. The food is a cover-up for everything else, and it does go much deeper than that. And it's the same thing. People come in and they say, well, can I just exercise, and we have to, we don't do that. We also encourage people to stop the exercise for now and stop, because it is all part of the same addiction, all part of the same, obsession.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. And you said something I really want to hone in on, because I've heard people talk about that who have an alcohol problem, that they want to go to the 12-step program to learn how to drink like a lady or a gentleman, and they're shocked to find out that that's not what it's about, that, total abstinence and anything that affects you from the neck up and makes you goofy, as we say. And so I think that's a very important point. So I'm glad you brought that up, because again, this is a program that there's not really good information even on the Google machine. I'm a master of the Google machine, and coming up to the show, I looked up different things, and that's why I'm glad you're here with some of the literature. Do you want to go through the 12 steps that you have for your program?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and this is adapted from the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
So, step 1, we admitted we were powerless over food and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addictive eaters and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Well, I like the fact that you incorporate the spirituality. For years, I've had counseling practices, and I've done it under my ordination. I'm clinically trained, so I could sit for the boards for a state license. But one of the problems with the state licenses is they like to discourage spiritual discussions. And now, while I'm a priest, I don't push religion on people, but quite often, while I'm doing therapy with people, I point out, look, there's some spiritual practices that if you're going to get better, you're going to need to get involved with. Prayer and meditation. Some type of contact with the God as you have an understanding of. And so I'm glad to hear you have that incorporated in your steps. That's not just about, as Anna said, not just about don't eat that.
Yeah.
If that's all it was, I would have never come to this program, because I could have done that.
Well, exactly. And a lot of people don't know that. My sister, God rest her soul, she tried everything, and she was easily 200 pounds overweight from the time she was 20 till she died a couple years ago. And she tried all kinds of stuff, and she did go to some different programs for it. I mean, some were name brands. I'm not going to bring them up here because I don't want to imply that they don't work. For some people, they do. I tried many times to relay, but there's a universal rule that we can't help people we share DNA with. They can hear from other people, but not from us. I'm her brother, the priest. I'm absolutely useless. But, try to share with her, look, and this is going to sound corny, but you say it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. And it's going to be important that you get down to causes and conditions, because this is just an outward manifestation of something going on inside. And if you don't get in touch with that, what does it matter what you weigh? You're still getting eaten up, and it's taken away your quality of life. Right. So does that fit in any way of what you do in your program or your philosophy?
It does, because our first step, it says we admitted we are powerless over food. Mm-hmm. So I have no power. Right. If I could stop this on my own, I would have stopped it. Right. And I can't. And so there has to be a power greater than myself. Mm-hmm. And I have to be willing to turn my life and my will over to that power. Now, we don't say you have to be this religion or you have to believe in this God, but there's something that's the power is greater than me. Right. And I, and coming into the program, that's hard to it's hard to understand that, and it's hard to want to believe that, and especially for me, because I was so independent when I came here, and I thought, how is a power greater than myself going to help me? But the thing is that it, I think that we were talking about this on the way here. You have to almost be beaten into submission, yes. And you just have to be willing to believe. And I know for me that I could not stop eating on my own. I just couldn't. So that's why we say choose a power of your understanding, and people will start to build that relationship. And it does come from within. Sure. You don't have to find it anywhere else. It's right here, already there. We just have to tap into it. Right. Yeah.
I think that's very wise. And again, some of the things that keep people from going to certain places, they're afraid they're going to get preached at. And they're going to have to take someone else's concept. So I think that would be quite comforting to people to find out that you can come wherever you are. That's just fine. We're not going to sell you a package on religion or non-religion. So that's good. I think that's very important information for listeners to hear. What else would you like for me to know about your program?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we do have a website, so if anybody would like to go on that website, it's www.addictiveeatersanonymous.org, and we have a 15 questionnaire on there, sure. Which is really good, because sometimes you may question and say, well, I don't know if this is really a problem. And I think if you at least just take a look at that, you'll see that it's a lot more than again just putting on a few pounds over Christmas, right? Sure. Or over the holidays. So it's a great place to start with that. We do have great stories on there, some literature on there. So I think it's a good place to go. We are all over the world, and we have a web meeting once a month, which is the third Saturday of the month, mm-hmm. right, Lori? Yeah. Third Saturday. And so people are on there from all over the world, and it's a great thing to be involved with.
Now, I know my listeners are going to be wanting to know this. Is there a fee for that monthly meeting?
No, absolutely not. You need to go to our website so that and just send an email, so they'll send you the link to get on. It's a Zoom meeting, right? Mm-hmm. Zoom, and no fee is required. And so even if you just want to sit in just to see what's this about, it's you can do that.
Now I'm going to have to ask you a question about that, because my greatest skill on the computer has been I learned how to play solitaire. What is a Zoom meeting?
It's like Skype online.
Oh, okay.
With a bunch of members.
Like FaceTime.
Yes.
Okay. Now you're talking my language. I'm going to have you two get a little closer to those microphones.
I think Zoom is just the name of the, just like Skype is the name brand, Zoom is a name brand, yeah.
Okay, because again, this is real blonde hair that we're looking at. It's not a dye job, and so when I ask these questions, I really don't know.
Yeah.
And so, well, good, I'm glad to know that.
And members each on the web event, there's 3 members that'll share their stories, and then the rest of the time, members are picked to share their experience, and so you can identify
Right.
or not. And you just, if you have a desire to stop addictively eating, you're a member.
That's a great thing.
And we do welcome healthcare professionals and people from other 12-step programs and family members, and
I think that would be important as well, because oftentimes family members don't know what to do and feel just as powerless. I mentioned about my sister. I feel absolutely powerless. I adored my sister, and I would have done anything I could to help her.
Right.
And her diabetes went all the way to renal failure.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a
fatal disease.
It is. And so I think that it's good that families can also tune in, get resources, and they can also listen for some of the similarities and say, yeah, I've seen this. And gathering some of that information, they can then help carry some of this and let their loved one know there are some resources out there.
Right. And that's all they really can do is just say, look, here's,
right.
a place where you can go. And
right.
Because ultimately it has to be the decision of the person who has the addiction.
Sure. Well, a friend of mine used to say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, but you can make him thirsty.
That's right.
And speaking of thirsty, we're coming up to our next commercial break. My guests this evening are Anna R. and Lori from Addictive Eaters Anonymous, and we'll be back with you in 2 and 2.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Glenn Anderson. Here's your forecast for the remainder of your evening. Expect some patchy fog later tonight, early morning. Otherwise, mostly clear with an overnight low around 47 degrees. There is a chance of showers moving in late Friday afternoon. Otherwise, mostly sunny and a high near 69. I'm Glenn Anderson, broadcasting live from the Tri-City Center at the 10 and 210 freeways. With a trifecta of talk in Southern California, that's KCAA 102.3 FM Riverside, 106.5 FM Redlands, and The Legacy, that's 1050 AM Loma Linda, San Bernardino.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM. We're on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I'm your host, Father John Reed. And remember, there's only 2 A's there. If you put 3 in there, you'll get the Auto Club. And I want to remind you that you can follow us on Facebook. You can also follow us on Instagram. And also, those of you who watch this on YouTube, when I upload it, which this will be uploaded tomorrow, subscribe. It helps us, believe me. And also, if you want to help keep us on the air, if you want to come and support by going to our website, www.viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, and you can click on the support button, and whatever you want to give is terrific. There's PayPal, you can do credit card, whatever you want to do. You can even write a check off of Nick's bank account. We'll tell him later I'm sure his wife will know before he does. Speaking of which, how you doing tonight, Nick?
I'm splendid. How are you?
Good, but I didn't know you're using Splenda now, but that's nice.
Well, it's part of the New Year's resolutions,
There you go. Well, it's always good to have you here, and I appreciate everything you do for the show. Nick is
appreciate that.
Best guy in the business. If you don't know that already, those of you who listen know how good he is. So
that's because you only know less than 5 engineers, but...
No, I also know Casey, the engineer over at Amtrak. So I know 6 engineers.
Oh,
Just one
go.
uses a train.
You don't want me behind a train.
No, but you have a one-track mind.
Good. Very nice.
You like that? I wound that one up.
Man,
that was full steam engine right there. Okay.
Man, okay, I'm gonna cut you off right there.
There you go. Just like we're married. Cut off again. So, anyhow, we're talking this evening to 2 members of Addictive Eaters Anonymous, Lori and Anna R. And we're going to talk a little bit about denial. And a friend of mine, Father Joseph Martin, used to tell a story about denial that went something like this, that there's a 86-year-old man who decided he's going to marry this 18-year-old. And everybody's trying to tell him what a bad decision this is. It's just not a good idea. And finally, they decided to do an intervention. And while he's being intervened on, the doctor's there, the accountant, the kids, everyone. And they're telling him what a bad idea it is, and he just won't hear it. And then finally, the physician said, now, Hank, think about this for a moment. You're 86 years old. She's 18. You're going to get married. You're going to go on a honeymoon. There's going to be intimate relations. Have you ever thought about with that distance of age, that gap, that just might cause death? Well, that stopped Hank. He thought for a moment and then said, well, if she dies, she dies. When we have denial, no matter what facts people put before us, we don't see it.
Right.
And so how do you deal with the denial? Well, what brought you through yours, if you could think back?
Yeah, for me, I know that the denial definitely ran deep because I came into the program and it took me over 10 years to stop eating. And because I just wanted to... you're asking me to give up the one thing I love more than anything else in this world, right?
Yeah.
And I was going to figure out another way. I wasn't that bad. I had a job and I was paying my bills, and I can't be that bad. But I wanted to figure it out on my own. I didn't want to do the 12 steps. I didn't want to give up the food. I wanted to figure this out on my own, and I just couldn't. And the thing is it's easier to see denial in other people than it is in myself. Like, I can see somebody who walks into a meeting today, and I say, oh yeah, that's just denial. But I couldn't see it in myself. It's interesting, but yeah. I
want to go back to something you just said that I think is really important for the listeners to hear. It took you 10 years.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you a failure. Folks who are listening to this, I want to be real clear about this. These things can take time. And Anna continued to go back until she was able to hear or get what it is that was able to help her across that threshold. So if you're struggling with this and you're going back out and you feel that you haven't had success, don't give up.
No.
Keep going back, because if you don't show up to what they're doing, you won't be there for the miracle to happen where you can hear the message when you can hear it. And so I just want to emphasize that for a moment. And I'm glad you shared that it took you 10 years before you were able to break through that denial, so people know they're not bad for that.
No. And, and I'm so glad that I did stick around. A friend of mine tells me that I have the gift of desperation. And I always used to think, that's the gift I get, God, the gift of desperation. And but today I'm so grateful for it, because it's what made me stick around for 10 years, and there's a whole new life. Like, food is not the end of the world or the beginning of it. There's a whole new life out there. And there is a solution. And for those of you are home struggling right now and you're listening to this program and you don't want to get out of bed, or you can't face tomorrow, or you just don't know what to do, there is help and there is a solution, and it has given me more than I could have ever asked for. Yeah.
Oh, that's
fantastic.
Great. You know, your comment about this is the gift you give me, God, reminds me of Saint Teresa Avila, and she fell off a donkey and she looked up and says, well, no wonder no one likes you, God, if this is how you treat your friends.
Yes, I've said that many times too.
Lori, what was your experience with denial?
My experience with denial was more before I got into the program. Mine was that obsession that I could beat this, first of all, and every day I'd wake up and say, okay, today's the day. Today will be different. You know, I can beat this. No problem. I've got it. And then by noon, I'd be back to doing exactly what I was always doing. And then I'd be so miserable and I'd say, okay, never again. Okay, God, never again. And then the minute I had the urge again, you know, this is... it's an obsession of the mind and that mental twist.
Right.
So the minute that urge, whatever it was, which is basically I couldn't face life without something.
Sure.
So if I'd go a few hours and I had to, you know, live life on life terms, that was just too hard for me. So then my mind would take that twist and go, oh, you're not that bad. You'll just eat that much, or you'll just, you know, I negotiated that I could handle it this time. Or if I just lose this much weight, I'll be fine. I won't ever start again. And that was what my denial looked like.
You know, it's funny. We live in a culture that is stricken with addiction, not just food, not just booze, not just smoking. We even have addiction to anger. And a lot of people don't know that. If you listen to many radio stations, and that's why I try to have a show that's a positive influence, because it's easy to turn the dial and find someone who's angry about something. And it doesn't matter if it's on the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle. Anger sells. People get addicted to it because there's an adrenaline rush with it. The oxytocin in the brain gets stimulated. And if I'm hearing you correctly, that's not too far off from what happens with the food. The endorphins, you receive that from the food, and it gives you a sense of well-being, what we call a slight euphoric feeling, a medium euphoric, and a sense of being safe. Would that be an accurate description of what some of the food did for you at the time?
Well, I think, you know, the physical aspect of the food was like a drug for me. But like a drug, I needed a lot more as time went by, and it did a lot less for me.
Great analogy.
And then at that point, even it turned against me, even when it wasn't working. At that point, I'd already lost my power of choice. So then I was just in complete misery, and eventually the denial wasn't working so well. So I was miserable when I was eating. I was miserable when I wasn't eating. So, you know, this program has lifted the obsession through my surrender. That's the heart of this program, surrendering to something other than myself.
You know, that's a great point. And I could only try to imagine, because I'm not in your shoes, but the sense of depression that I would think would come with the thing that always gave you comfort no longer does that. And no matter how much you try, there's nothing there anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's, in my mind, a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
So when I come in and I hear there's a solution with people who had my problem, maybe different behaviors, it's, you know, like I say, we have people who have were overweight, underweight, obsessed with food, compulsive, you know, all different types of the same addiction. I come in and I hear their stories, and there's a solution, and they are recovered, and they are not obsessed with food, and they have this beautiful life to go with it, better relationships, manageable, then it's a miracle.
Well, I think of my absolute favorite performer out of every performer, and I'm not just saying that, I mean, she really was my inspiration, Karen Carpenter, who died of complications of anorexia. And no matter how much weight she lost, it was enough. She had an addiction, trying to be perfect in that way. And the reason I point her out is she's probably one of the most talented people I've ever known about, and someone who grew up doing performances. I have a real affinity for that.
Yeah.
And yet here she was considered, and they used to say in show business that she had the perfect voice. She was an incredible drummer. There wasn't an instrument she couldn't play.
Yeah.
And this thing killed her. So it goes to show it's not who you are, where you come from, what talent you have, what your intelligence level is. And you started to say something.
I did, because I just saw a documentary on her, and it was really interesting because one of the people spoke and said that she was the most honest person that he ever met, except when it came to food.
Wow.
And she lied about food. And when I was watching the documentary, and they were telling her like how thin she was, and and she said, "Oh no, I just was, just was sick." And that's what we do. We hide our disease, because there's a lot of shame that is attached to this disease.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we hide it, and we think we hide it well, where everybody can see it, right? And we think we're doing a great job, and that's all part of the denial.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I've also seen that it's only one aspect of it. Now, again, keep in mind I come back from a psychological background, so I approach it from that way as well. And I've seen people, what we call symptom transfer, and they go from the eating to cutting or gambling or sex addiction,
Yep.
a lot of things. And so if my experience has been, if we don't take an approach of a spiritual nature and get down to causes and conditions, not just the presenting symptom,
Right.
but down to causes and conditions, we're just changing seats in the Titanic, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And I think, again, that is why we like to state that this is a freedom from not just the food, but all mind-altering substance, because we do know that the addiction will swap.
right.
And that's part of the denial as well. And that's why we ask people, maybe you should not exercise well, for your first year, or work with your sponsor and see what they say, because they'll swap and go into that.
Yes.
I've worked with people who will get off the food and then all of a sudden they're running marathons every day, right? And it's because they're not dealing with the causes and the effects.
As soon as you said that, I had a friend of mine come to mind. I'm not going to say their name on the air. And they went to lose the weight, and they started going so crazy at the gym that even the trainers were saying, look, you're going to give yourself a heart attack. It's not okay to go from nothing to running 2 hours a day, doing a Stairmaster, doing all these things you're doing. So it's a 4-hour workout. It's not good for your body. You're not doing what you want to do with it. And he happened to have medical people in the family, and they were all saying, look, what you're doing is really destructive. You're coming home and you are so soaked, it's as though you had jumped in a swimming pool with your clothes on and you weren't in the pool.
Right.
That's all from your perspiration. The body is not meant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that just to say I really get what you're saying with the compulsion going from one thing to another.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're in our last couple of minutes. What are some final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
There is a solution,
Okay.
and our primary purpose is to help the addictive eater who still suffers and who is suffering, and that we believe this is a spiritual malady.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, it's easy, not easy, but we seek things on the outside to help control our eating, and that's not the solution. So through this program, the obsession of food has been lifted through a higher power, and I have a life beyond what I thought was possible.
Right.
Yeah, I just want people to know there is a way out. Don't give up hope. Go to our website, look us up, come into one of our meetings, just see if it's a fit, because it, like Lori says, you'll get a life that you didn't even know can exist. And I don't want people to give up hope. Just look us up.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is it sounds like this is not a do-it-yourself program. It's a we program.
Absolutely.
And it's not a self-improvement program. It's a self-discovery program. Would that be accurate?
We consider this that people are ill. We don't consider them bad or morally weak. It's an illness.
Yes.
So.
And it's a deadly illness.
Yes.
Illness.
And not just from overeating, but from undereating and from different ways of abusing the body. Well, my guests this evening have been Ann R. and Lori from Addictive Eaters Anonymous. They both have shared some of their stories with them. If it's okay with you, I'll put the contact information on our website so that people who want to get in contact with you for the next week, they can go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com and it will be on there. Also, you can download this program on MP3. Just come to www.kcaaradio.com and click on my program. It'll take you to where you can download that. You can also go to YouTube. I'm trying to think of all the things off my head. My blonde hair is kicking in. And go to Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA, and you can get all the programs from the last year. But most importantly, if you or a loved one are dealing with this, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You heard it tonight. It's not a moral issue. It's not about self-will. It's a disease, physical, emotional, and spiritual. One that we can't win on our own. It takes a group effort. It's more than just meeting with people. It's identifying and finding a common purpose. And so I hope this was beneficial tonight. If nobody told you that they loved you this week, let me be the first. Tune in next week when my guest will be Senator Josh Newman, and we'll talk about some interesting things there. God bless, and we'll meet again next week.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
This is KCAA.
Well, you know what I lost? Interrupted sleep. It made a serious difference for me, so I'm letting you know that you need a MyPillow too. It stays cool all night long. No more waking up to flip to the cool side of the pillow. It keeps its shape. No more wrestling your pillow in the middle of the night. And one thing you will love, you can toss a MyPillow into your washer and dryer, and it comes out looking like new again. It's made in the USA, and here's something new. They used to have a 60-day money-back guarantee, but now